Welcome to the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club.
Power down on this start and really try and get the kick to form that group that will take the first pack and break this group up.
And again, another attack coming as these fantastic athletes here in Category 1 fighting out for the very front of the race here.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think you're right. I think Mr. X100 Sai Safrazad saw the danger of Bushmill coming back on. And as you can see, that rider now closing the gap, Matt, to get back on that group.
Knudsen keeps that pace high. They're aware behind of where people are. They're watching the time gaps. Most of them will have the feed rolling as well. And they're watching live to make sure that they know what's happening. At the moment, though, you can see that group is splitting a little bit, but Jones quickly back into the mix. And this is going to be critical for these riders. We have 200 meters. This is about the momentum through here. Popovic, the momentum master, is coming. Is Popovic going to get it? Knudsen goes through. Knudsen gets it. It was Popovic who got it by 0.004. Welcome to the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club with me, Matt Payne. It's our final for October on the 30th of October, 2022. My name is Matt Payne. I'm joined by Emma Martin once again here in the studios. And we've been witness to some amazing qualifying racing in races 1, 2, 3 and 4. But of course, today is the biggie. Today is the day when it all has to come and count. And as well as our individual prizes, we have our team prizes. Emma, welcome back into the studios once again. It's going to be a cracker today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Matt, and you are right. The 4 October qualifying rounds have been exceptional, and we've seen some phenomenal racing by our men, and I cannot wait, I'm going to say that again, to see the racing today.
I know, and I think really it's always this at the end of the month when we come in from the qualifiers where people have been putting qualifying rides, maybe working together as a team, making sure they get it right. We then come into the finals. The route is always critical to this. And today we have an absolute beast. Emma, run us through the course, please.
Yeah, so we have indeed, Matt. We are in Australia today for the October final. So 45 kilometres in distance, 700 metres of climbing. And as you can see in front of you, 3 Category 4 climbs today. And we finish at the top of Mount Pleasant, that Category 4 climb. So just a quick run through. It's looking like it's a really hilly course. You know, less than 50% of the climbing today takes place on those 3 Category 4 climbs. Yes, you heard that right. There is more climbing outside of the Category 4 climbs on this course today than there is by adding up the total climb on all 3 of those Category 4 climbs. It is going to be a beast of a course today.
And we have used this course before for the men, and it's a very, very aggressive rider's course in the sense that, as Emma says, there is a lot of climbing, but there's also a lot of descending. It's very, very quick from the ascent to descent. There's very little flat whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right, Matt. So we used this course with the men in September final. And that was the last time the men raced this course. So this is the first time we've used this course in October. And it's 2 full laps of Wollongong City. And then it is right to the top of Mount Pleasant. So it's going to be a really interesting battle. And as you say, Matt, it is constant. It is up, it is down. The gradient is changing constantly. And last time we saw an epic battle between Vink, Jones and Osborne, with Knudsen and Vujasin rounding out the top 5 in Category 1.
Indeed, and let's have a look at our Category 1 riders, because of course today we have our teams qualifying. The UAE Clan team are back with strength in depth, the Yorkshire Pudding team as well. We've also got Team SZ, the Swedish squad, well represented with Oliver Simmons in there. We've got the Italian Gilettos, the Danish Pavlovas, the Belgian Waffles, but don't discount next PB Insured as well. We've got a real mix of riders in here, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see who can take away that top spot today, Emma. And we've got more riders in teams now, of course, because it is our final.
It is indeed. So we've got 45 riders on the start line in Category 1 today and 7 teams. Let's not forget prizes for the top 5 only, Matt, so it's going to be fast and furious.
It is indeed, and just as fast and furious in the second category competition with the UAE Falcons, Turbo Team Italy, and Hubbards in here. And going to be very interesting to see who is going to take it out amongst them. We've seen some really strong riding by the globally united Whooshers, but they're up against new teams like the Horsemen. Team Italy are back, Team Turbo with some familiar names in there. Emma, a lot of riders in these squads.
Yeah, a lot of riders in these squads. So 42 riders on the start line in Category 2, 12 teams. So huge team recruitment going on, and going to be really interesting to see who turns out to be the top 5.
Indeed, and in terms of teams that qualify, they need 3 riders to qualify, and that's the same whether you're in Category 1, 2, or 3. And Category 3, I have to say, amazing to see that all but one rider, part of a team. So the CM team are once again back with us, UAE Road Warriors as always, Team Strikers, the global team, and the DX Biker Dudes, all signing up riders, and all could qualify for those team prizes. There are 5 teams that could qualify. That means a prize for every one of them.
Yeah, but in which order, Matt? That's the question. So you're right, 22 riders on the start sheets for Category 3 today, 5 teams, and we are down on the start line with 5 seconds to go. So we are in with Mr. X100, and this course starts with a flat start today before we hit a small kicker. So the power goes down and the men are off on the October final of the Sunday Race Club. So we are kicking on this flat land now, and we are looking for some power to come out and for the selection to be made.
Riders very quickly need to sort this out because it is not an easy course profile, as you've seen. This is a very tough race. Our prizes for the top 5 riders individually, supplemented, of course, by the top prizes for the teams. Category 1 winning team, 50,000 AED. Massive, massive prize to share between your teammates, as well as taking the individual prizes, which you're almost certain to be in if you're up there winning the team prizes. And you can see at the moment, nobody wants to be left behind on this big train leaving the station, and a massive mix of riders. Great shot back here from Jose Javido as we take a little bit of a look back from him. The Horseman leading this cavalry charge out at the moment. Just riding in with Mr. X100, who's tucked nicely into this pack. Already heart rate interesting, 137. That start really does take its toll, Emma.
It does indeed, and it is so important on a course like this today to actually make that front group and make that selection. If you are not in that front group one, this teams and start working together, you are in trouble today.
Well, you can see already a large number of yellow and green jerseys. Yellow for Category 1, green for Category 2. Mixed in, a number of Category 3 riders trying to stay with this group as long as possible to get as much of a head start on the rest of the competition as they head out today. So you can just see the UAE clan team well represented. I've seen, say, Safrazad in there, SS, Pablo Popovic, Mr. X100 in there, seeing Vujasin in here as well, Cutler, Van Est, Osborne, all in the mix. Van den Eekhout is in here, Vink in the mix, Knudsen in here as well. We're looking to see if any of these teams are missing riders. Lucas Nasca is up in the mix as well. Luca, of course, riding for the Italian Gelato team, but this is the first steep drag. I've ridden this. This is horrible. It's really, really steep. It hurts because you're straight off 1.5K, bang, you're onto a slope of 7+%, and already you can see the green, the blue, and the yellow being separated out.
Yeah, and this is a nasty start, isn't it? That flat section leads you into a false sense of security before you start to see gradients of 7, 8, 9%. But we can see, Matt, as we are in with these Category 1 yellow jerseys, that they are coming to the fore now. And this is forming a long snake behind them. So this was why that start was so important. Getting to the front of that group was absolutely essential for hitting this short bump as they start to go over the top and go down the other side.
And you can see on the top right-hand side of your screen, a big split starting to occur in between these groups of riders. And this is where it's key. There is very little transition time. This actually has the longest transition from ascent into descent of any of the summits, pretty much, on that profile. The rest are almost instantaneously up straight into a down. You wouldn't want to take a long vehicle over the top of most of these climbs. It would ground out on the bottom as you go over the top, but no grinding it out for these riders at the front. They are absolutely flying at the moment with 45 kph on the clocks at the moment, with SS tucked in here. But we keep on seeing that washing machine effect. Riders on the front coming off to the side, and it continuing to roll around as they come down past the lighthouse and take the right-hand turn here to head in along the coastline.
Yeah, and this is constant. The gradient is changing constantly as we see Safrazad on the front with Ferry and SS really starting to continue to keep that pace going.
I think there's going to be a big shedding of riders. They know that this course is tough, but they've got to get this pacing right. It is one of the most physically demanding courses that we use. It hasn't got the biggest descent. It is no difference in distance, but what it is it's unrelenting. And as Emma has pointed out, you have to have that modulation, that flexibility in performance to move up and down the rev range as you roll through these constant gradient changes. And already looking at that screen, I think, Emma, you're just taking a little look at about 35, I'd guess.
Yep, I think there's about 30, 32, 33 riders in that front group at the moment. And our top leading category 2 riders in there as well at the moment. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I reckon about 9 or 10 category 2 riders still in that front group at the moment, doing an outstanding job at the moment on this course.
They are, and they are working very, very well at the moment. You can see that the pressure and the pace on these riders has meant that the group has whittled down a big pack of starters in this race at the race start. Huge entry, 79 riders already now, the number that are left in the race, but a leading pack of just over 30 riders have been split clear as they have put the pressure on coming down into town. This descent is a very fast straight descent. No chance to get away really here, but it's soon going to go back up again. Currently traveling along, we are at 3.8k complete. Remember, we hit that first big climb, which has got a descent in the middle of it at 9.5k.
Yeah, that first climb, Matt, you're right. It comes at 9.5 kilometres into this race. It's a category 4 climb. It's 2.4 kilometres in length with an average gradient of 4.5%. But that is so deceptive because you're right. The climb goes up, it comes down, and then it goes up again. So actually 4.5% overall. Really, it's so much steeper than it sounds.
It is, isn't it? And just taking a look at this group, they're still across one full lane. So it's not totally strung out, which we wouldn't expect, but we are climbing, aren't we? 3% on MyWhoosh. It feels like 3% when you're riding out on tarmac, out on the road. It is enough to do some damage, to make you push on those pedals that little bit harder, just to try and stay with the pack. And the aerodynamic advantage, remember, decreases as that speed goes up, as it becomes more about being able to have a good watts per kilo, good power to weight ratio. But the moment we go over the top, you can see instantly we're onto a 4% descent. You go up, you drop straight back down again, you go straight back up again. You've got to be able to keep that pressure on. And you see at the moment, Saeed Safrazad just rolling through there with zero pace. Now we're in with Oliver Simmons. Actually was racing against Oliver Simmons yesterday on the bike, not in real life, in the real world, outside world, on the tarmac, but actually racing on the virtual worlds. And do you know what? He's quick. He's really, really quick. He's so strong, constantly attacking off the front. But we have here, not racing against people like me, we're racing against world-class athletes, and that is making a difference because Simmons is tucked in this bunch. He's not going off the front at the moment on his own. That's for sure.
Yeah, and this constantly changing terrain, Matt, is starting to see 1 or 2 riders just slip off the back of that. And we saw that going up that last climb, not actually on the climb, but on the section that went over the top and down the other side. You know, you need to be really, really mindful when we've got rolling parkour like we've got today, that if you are slightly off the back of the group, even just 1 or 2 seconds as the front of the group goes over the top of the climb and starts to descend, the momentum of the downhill elongates the distance between you and that group. And unless you are able to put a big kick in and get on the back of that group and maintain the draft, then you are going to go off the back. And we saw that on that last rolling section. So the group, I think, is going to slowly whittle down, but we are still around 34 riders. So we are in with Carl Tysalius at the moment, one of our Category 2 riders. Carl had an outstanding ride in the September final on this course. Our Category 2 riders, Angarita and Spratt, came through to almost a sprint at the finish with hardly anything to split them. Tysalius came in 20 seconds back in third. Gakes in fourth place, a minute back, and Maglio rounded out the top 5. Gakes has now progressed to Category 1. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with our Category 2 riders. But the main protagonists are in this lead group at the moment.
So great to see the racing it's already starting to whittle this group. It's taken this group down to 30. Emma, are our Category 2 riders just sitting in there waiting until they can't hold on any longer? Do you think anybody's going to be in when we get to the top, say, of climb number 1?
Well, that's a really good question, Matt. So a great tactic for our Category 2 riders is to go hard from the gun, to get into that lead group and make that first selection. And then, as you've just said, sit in this group as much as possible and take as much draft as possible. You are right, they are not as strong as our Category 1 riders and their power output is not as big. So at some point it is highly likely, particularly when we get to the big climbs, that they will fall back out of this main front group, and the main front group will whittle even further down and we will end up with a group of Category 1 riders. But tactically, the longer they can stay in this group, the better for them, the further they go down the road with these Category 1 riders, and the more draft and benefit they can take from that.
Well, interesting to see that Hassan Al-Ramethri not having caught that train, but he is traditionally a slower starter who then works his way through the bunch. Some riders, that is just how it's going to work. In front of him, it's 8 seconds to Avedo, 9 to Aka and Urbano, and then 30 seconds to that leading group with Said Safrazad. I think at the moment showing that he's dropped out of the leading group, and that's a very interesting start. We're going to get that confirmed, I think, a little bit later on. We just have a look up there, but at the moment, looking at our Category 1 riders, looking very, very hot indeed. A very, very fast pace. Here you can see 73 kph just came up on that clock, and that is absolutely flying. We're in with SS at the moment, who's marking those moves. Lionel Vajassin showing he is super aggressive, as we saw earlier on. But I think we are going to see a little bit of a look. We're just scrolling through the groups here on the right-hand side of the screen, and I don't think we've got any sign of Saeed Safrazad in that leading group. We're just taking a double check through, but I don't see him in there so far. I don't know about you, Emma.
Well, that's really interesting, Matt, because on a couple of occasions, I have seen his watts on the screen drop to 0. Sometimes that indicates there's a technical problem. There may be something else going on. We don't know. But we've seen him in the race, but he was back in, I think, around 38th position. One of the things I think is really interesting to watch on the screen for anybody who is joining us for the first time, the small right-hand screen at the top of the right-hand side of the page with the blob on the road is a really good indicator of what's happening in the group at the moment. And you can see it blob up, you can see it stretch out to form a snake, and you can see riders drop off really easily. And that gives you a really good indication of how this pack is moving, and how it is moving amongst itself, and how those riders are faring. So we are in with Mr. X100, currently 22nd in this group at the moment. It is still a large group. We are 8.4 kilometres into a 45-kilometre race, and the pace and the parkour has been constantly changing today with this rolling terrain around Wollongong.
Oh, this constantly changing terrain is going to be key today, isn't it, Emma? And again, we're just seeing riders struggling at the back of this pack. We just see one rider just being drifted off the back. Interesting to see Panizza up at the front here. Ricardo Panizza, another of our really strong Category 1 riders. Let's see if he's going to be in the mix as we come in to the finish. Got to say, big favourites today. If we're looking at these riders, UAE Clan Team, pretty much any of them. who's left, if they're left in that group, particularly Mr. X100 Pablo Popovic on this climb, potentially Popovic. But for me, maybe Michael Fink, potentially Phil Graves if he's on form, but just struggling to see. He's just tucked in there. Jason Osborne has been very strong on our climbing courses. I mean, we saw him when we went over to the fantastic world of Colombia, which is a brilliant route to go ride. It's a great world to go explore. He was on some serious form. He's looking good as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I wouldn't discount Michael Knudsen, Matt. We've seen him climb really, really strongly. So some great riders in here, whether that be the UAE clan team, whether we see Pablo Popovic, whether we see SS or Mr. X100 up there, Knudsen, Osborne, Vink, there are some. It's going to be a really good race. Lionel Vajassin, let's not discount him either. And I think it's going to be who comes over those first two Category 4 climbs in that lead group before we go into that last 11.8 to the finish at the final top with the flag at the top of Mount Pleasant.
So our riders running in, you can see the wall ascending in front of them. They're at that 1% rolling. So it's not even a flat run in to the steep sections. Remember, we have a kicker. We have a slight descent. I say a slight descent. It's a huge descent. Then we have another big kick up to the top. When we go over the top, the summit, there is a dip and rise. The road turns a right-hand corner. It basically turns right, that goes over the top of the ridgeline, drops down, does a right turn, goes back up onto the ridgeline, then drops back off again. And that makes things very, very difficult for our riders because it really hurts when you've gone over the top. But at the moment, this group pushing on. Martin's on the front of this group, and they're pushing 7.8 watts per kilo, but he's got Vajassin, Zanaska, Mel, and Noren right alongside. The pressure is on, but it's not completely wound up here. We're at nearly 10% gradient.
We are at nearly 10% gradient, and you can see on that shot the damage it is doing to that group of 35 riders. And we can now start to see those Category 1 yellow jerseys come to the fore. But that is a large group of Category 1 jerseys still there. This is the first short climb before we drop down and then go up again, Matt. We talked earlier on about the Category 4 climbs going up, down, and then up. This is just the small up before we get onto the main part of this climb, as we can see the brow of this hill as the road sweeps round the left-hand side, and these riders have hit the descent already.
And what I noticed as we came up that section of climb, we had 3 riders from Category 2 left, but they were right on the tail end of that group. And if any gap was open, that kick over the top, this fast descent, and then this run into the climb proper really takes its toll. We come around this left-hand turn, and then the riders basically see the road rearing up in front of them once again. It's leveled, and we're already changing gradient, and we're onto the climb. You can see how fast that transition is, but we're now heading up into the big section of ascent here at Wollongong. This is our massive climb up here to take us right the way up to the top of Mount Pleasant, and you can see that the riders who were not in contact behind, they are 2 riders now distanced, and I think we literally have, I make it 1 Category 2 rider, maybe 2 left in here. I think it is literally 1 rider from Category 2 left in this group. This group is down to about 20 riders by my reckoning. I'm going to take that with as an approximate estimation of 15%, though. You can see these riders are riding at 7.5 watts per kilo. The power is coming down. The group is breaking. And I said we had 1 Category 2 rider left in this group. I don't think we have any more. Just breaking off the back of that pack. You just see the gaps have opened. It's Francis Pino, who's at a couple of seconds. He's ahead of Maglio. So it's Pino and Maglio in Category 2. Pino riding for the Turbo team, Maglio riding for the Horseman team, who are the last riders in Category 2, or the first riders in Category 2 overall. The last riders to be dispatched from this group as Knudsen continues to wind this up at 7.4 watts per kilo. Huge power coming out of Knudsen, and it's starting to break the riders behind a little, who have to respond. They have to pick the pace up and get back on his heels. It levels fractionally here, but you'll see that it kicks right at the finish as well, which is just mean.
Yeah, but if you know it's coming, and these guys do because they've raced it before, you know where to save your effort for. And Vujasin, Knudsen, Zanaska, SS, Noren, Vanden Eckhart, they have all been here before and they are class riders. So I'm looking at this, Matt, and I'm thinking there must still be just shy of 16 riders. So 15 riders in this group at the moment, 4 seconds back to Phil Graves, who is putting a big kick in to try and close that gap. But 15 riders at the moment in this lead Category 1 group.
Well, 15 riders. I mean, we started off that race with so many riders, and we quickly went down to just under 80. We had a leading pack of 30. We're now down to a leading pack of 15 riders, and the teams are well represented. But this is the hard part for me. You go straight over the top, watch the transition here. It's only a matter of a few seconds. You go into this descent, but as we hit the dip in the bottom, it's an almost instantaneous change in gradient to go back up again, and it's not quite as big a climb. It's a little kicker, but this is where, if you've been on your limit, you are likely to snap. And this is where the teams know that, and this is where we're going to see them pushing on. I think one or two of our Category 1 riders already starting to be distanced off the back. You can see that little riser there. The rider's trying to take momentum, which is easy to do when you're strong and terribly hard when you're not feeling on the pace.
Yeah, and that top right-hand corner again is showing us a great shot of this race at the moment, with the gaps forming in that group and riders kicking and trying to push on and close the gap. In fact, look at that. Those first two blobs have now come together and that gap's been closed. And this blob behind that we can see is the one working to chase and close that gap.
Well, we are in with Martin Martins in this group. So you just change across. So you can see the rider we're following basically on the top right-hand side of the map is the rider with that slightly larger circle. And that is the rider who we're in with, just jumping in there, Johan Noren. Another rider who has been steadily improving on the way through, all the way through the September finals. And every single qualifier, he's been in the top 10. Every single one of them, from the September final right through to this race.
Yeah, now let's not forget, Matt, Noren is an elite mountain biker when he's outdoors. I think this course is going to suit him because of this constantly changing gradient and the hard work and the hard effort being more representative of a mountain bike race than actually a road race where you may well be in a pack for a long period of the day.
Certainly going to be... I think that change in pace, that change in kick, as you say, should suit him. But it's a long race in some ways. As for 45k, it's going to be an hour plus. And I think it was an hour and 6 the winning time we were here in September, if I remember right. But, and it is a big but, it is close to a race time for a mountain bike, a short mountain bike race, isn't it?
Well, yeah, so you would expect the leader in the elite race to come in at around an hour and a half. But, you just said this is an hour and 6 minutes, so it's sounding to me like it's bob on perfect.
Well, we'll see. Let's see how he holds out against some of the best riders in the world here on MyWhoosh on the Sunday Race Club. Our leading riders as we approach the 15-kilometre marker and 20 plus minutes of racing covered. Up at the front, 10 riders clear with Mr. X100, Martin Martins, Vidal Mayer, Phil Graves, all chasing behind, all looking to close the gap down. The question will be, can they make it across before we hit our next big descent and the group goes? Or we hit the next big climb and the power and the pace of the very strongest riders are able to pull clear. So there we go. With that red bandana on, that is Mr. X100. On the right-hand side, he joins in to this group. He's just tucked on the back of the group. So that's 13 riders in the group. Phil Graves, I think, at the moment is just distance for a regular winner in the early part of the season of 2022, back in the spring of 2022. Now just fighting, I think, a little bit harder for those places, but we're in with the UAE clan team's road captain, Mr. X100, who has got teammates in here, and I think they're looking good at the moment. Have they got the firepower for that team finish? We will see. Remember, we are now into what is 13 riders on the road. We're looking on the left-hand side of the screen. Phil Graves' chase here. Now, here it comes. So Graves and Cutler are both together. They're both on the Yorkshire Pudding Express team. They've both dropped their teammate Mitch Ferry for about 13 seconds behind. However, Ferry has got company. Bush, Muller, Theme, and Bjarhead are all in there. Bush, Muller, Theme riding for the next PB Insured team. We've got Bjarhead riding for the Team SZ, but Phil Graves of the Yorkshire Pudding Express leading the chase. Meanwhile, at the front of the race, Jason Osborne just keeping that pace a little bit higher as they come down into Town. We're at 15.7k covered. Remember, this lap 16.1k round, so not far till we hit that line, about another 300 meters or so. And at the moment, as we come towards the end of lap one of 2.5 laps of this course at Wollongong, which finishes at the top of Mount Pleasant, a mountaintop finish. It is Jason Osborne who has been doing the work to keep that pace just a little bit higher, just to try and, I think, prevent any speculative attacks as we make our way in and through. So 16.1k covered. We have 24, just nearly 25 minutes of racing on the clock. We have a leading group of 13 riders. 20 seconds down, we have our nearest chasers in the shape of Ferry and Graves. And then we're about another 13 or 14 seconds back behind that. So at the moment, the riders are riding well. We are coming up to the end of the first lap. That's at the end of this straight. You can see the arch in front of our riders. And at the moment, Category 1 riders all together, the leading group on the road.
Yeah, and as you're saying there, Matt, so we are now looking in with our lead Category 2 rider on the right-hand side of your screen, Francis Lupino. He got dropped, if you remember, from that lead group, but he was the last Category 2 rider to get dropped. And we are watching now as he is joined by Maglio, another Category 2 rider, and Spratt, as well as one of the Category 1 riders. And this is going to form a strong group who are going to be able to work together. These are 3 strong Category 2 riders, so we are watching the front of the Category 2 race here.
Indeed, and we've got Globally United Washers rider Spratt in there. We have got, as you said, Emma, we've got Maglio from the Horseman team, and we've got Alpino from the Turbo team. 3 different riders on 3 different teams represented at the front. That's going to leave that team competition wide open behind in Category 2. Remember, in Category 1, 2, and 3, 3 riders in each team to count. Combined total the 3 fastest riders to score, and the shortest time obviously takes the win. So 3 teams represented at the front of Category 1, more than 3 teams represented at the front of Category 2, more than 3 teams at the front of Category 1. We're just going to work, have a little bit of working out there. I'm not sure whether it's going to be Emma or myself doing the head scratching to work out which teams are in and how many we've got. We've definitely got Zanaska up in that leading group, which means that we have with Mel and Noran the Gelato team represented. I think because we can see that we have Knudsen and Vink along with the rider Osborne, and that is Pavlova's represented. We know we've got UAE clan team in there with Mr. X100, Pablo Popovic, and SS in the midst. Theme is in there as well, and he is working really hard. But I think really this leading group with people like Simmons in there, I think there's no way this is going to come back. It is a very strong lead group, and there are more riders in Group 1 than there is in Group 2.
There are. So we currently have 13 riders on Category 1 in this lead group at the moment. And let's not forget Matt Vujasins, Martin and Van Elster also in this group. And that's 3 riders from the Belgian Waffles team. So on my count, we've got Belgian Waffles, we've got Danish Pavlovas, we've got Italian Gelato, and we've got the UAE clan team, all with numbers of riders, not just one rider, but multiple riders in this group. So we have a fantastic race still to go. 18k covered now, the 45-kilometer race.
I'm really interested when you look at these 2 groups. So the leaders on your left-hand side of your screen, the chasers on the right-hand side of your screen. The leaders already over that rise, and now on to the slight fall sort of flat as you go over the top of this first bump. It's the more rounded section of profile. Then on the right-hand side of your screen, the chase is just coming up to the top of there, and the power and the pace that is being exerted in here is really making life hard for the riders in the rest of the group, because Group 2 keeps on fracturing and reforming. They are riders on the limit.
Yeah, well, Group 2 now is now 6 riders in that chase group, and they are 150 metres behind this lead group. So they were split, they've come together, they are now a group of 6. The question is, can they work together over this transition period now? We've got this rolling lands with some steep climbs and lots of descents. It's about a 13, 14 kilometre transition between the top of the first category 4 climb and the bottom of the next time they go up that climb. So they've got some time. Can that group of 6 work together and close down further onto this group of 13 in front?
I suppose a lot of that, we know that you don't get distance for no reason. You get distance for a reason. Generally, 9 times out of 10, it's because you just don't have the power. Even if it's an issue for the back, as we see another attack going on the front, and Michael Vink now has gone clear on the front. He's pushed this up. Interestingly, Vujasin has responded with Osborne right on his heels here. And that was a little bit of a cheeky push over the top of that into the descent, wasn't it? So he went over the top, went into the descent. He put a little bit of a spurt on just to keep people awake and on their toes here. I think that was very interesting. What I was going to say was, it's going to depend on the dynamics of that front group a lot. Don't get distance for no reason. And even if you get distanced for the from the leading group, then generally what you'll find is when you get distanced out of that group, it is all about making sure that you don't panic, you don't worry, you just go straight on it, whether it's a mechanical, whether your legs have gone, because you can have a bad patch at the start and come back and take on up at the front.
You can do indeed, Matt, and really interesting there to see that the attack came over the top and on the descent. It was, what are these riders going to be expecting? They're going to be expecting an attack on a climb. They're not necessarily going to be expecting an attack on a descent. And that was really good. That kept riders on their toes. As we see the power go down again. Vink again, 8.1 watts per kilo. Pablo Popovic responding. Jason Osborne, 11 watts per kilo. They are pushing on again now on this transition area. And we're not even on the next category 4 climb.
So our riders continued with Osborne going over the top of Vink here. Remember, these two are teammates with Knudsen. So the 2 riders at the moment on the front pushing are the Danish Pavlova squad. They are the team who took the win in September, in July, in June, and in May. That is how frequently they have taken that top spot. They are generally the team to beat when it comes to the finals. Not in every race, but every time when it really counts, when there's money at stake. They are the number 1 team. In fact, the only team to beat them in the finals is, in fact, the team from the UAE clan team who took the win in August. So here on a Sunday Race Club, in our men's final in October, our leading group on your screen at the moment with Michael Knudsen accelerating and kicking. Remember, Knudsen is the teammate of Vink and Osborne. Vink and Osborne were just on the attack. Now it's Knudsen going over the top, that classic 1-2 attack and counter attack as they try and soften up the opposition on this, a course that is going to do a lot of the work for them, to be honest.
Yeah, this course is unrelenting. It just keeps giving, and not necessarily in a great way if you're a rider on it, but Knudsen pushes again, followed by Vink. Vanden Eckhart is there too. We are in with SS, who has kept his powder dry a little bit today and actually just sat in that group. I'm thinking there's going to be some action from SS later on this course today. He's taken this first lap as steady as possible, perhaps to do some damage later as we come into the finishing sections. But this group are continuing to stay together. There are 13 riders in this men's group at the front of this race, and they keep stretching their legs and coming back together again.
And you can just see that there's a lot of rest going on the back here. Those numbers drop down when people take a break, take a rest, just sitting in that draft, just making sure that they're not burning too much energy. But you've got to stay attentive, because if this race does get really aggressive and it really starts to wind up as we expect it will do, and the riders don't just rely on those big climbs, then what you've got to do, you've got to go with every single move. So leaders on the right-hand side of your screen, left-hand side of your screen, this is the chasing group of riders in here. So we've got Bush Muller, we've got Bjarhead, Simmons, We've also got in here Mitch Ferry, and I think it's going to be Bjarhead in here. Phil Graves, I think, is a little bit further down. He's 22 seconds down with Cutler at the moment. So this is the second group on the road now, and this is 5 riders, and that is because that leading group split and fractured down rather than riders chasing from the back to get into the front. Because remember, Phil Graves and Cutler were the nearest chasing group to the leaders.
Yeah, and this course is just showing what it's doing to this quality field. This is a hard course. It is hilly, it is constant, and there is no rest. And it's been really interesting. I've been keeping my eye on people's heart rates, and as we drop back into this front group, it's really interesting to see they've been taking an opportunity to drop those heart rates and get some micro rest, because as we've been dropping in and through these riders, at points early for them in their race, their heart rates have been really high with this constant attacks and constant pushing on. But as we're now in with Vink's heart rate sat at around 137, in with Popovic 146. They've taken an opportunity for a bit of a micro rest here on this course and on one of these downhill sections in an attempt to get a little bit of a breather.
So our riders are well on the way round. We are over half race distance here on Sunday Race Club. Our leading group have a decent gap now and should be enough to stay clear as they go through. They still have the biggest group on the road up at the front of the race. We are seeing these riders continuing to push. We are well into lap 2 of 2.5 laps, because we're going to finish on the top of Mount Pleasant, currently at 23k. That means we're about 3k from the start of our 4th category climb, which is a climb of 2 parts. We have the entree, which is the steep kicker. We have the little descent for a little bit of a break, a little bit of a pause to get your breath back, and then you're into the main course, which is a real tasty section with the 2 steep sections, and you can see it there. So we are at 23k at the moment. We're heading in towards that climb at 26.1k. You can see that first little peak. This could almost respond to the rider's heart rate, because they're going to get a bit of a kicker. They're going to try and get the heart rate back down again, but then it's going to really spike as you come up over onto the top of the climb. I'm sure one of our riders out there, maybe Carte Celis, will be able to put a corresponding heart rate onto a map for us on the Facebook pages and show us what his heart rate did at the corresponding parts of the course. It is definitely going to test our riders, and I think as we run into this climb, it's going to be critical now. You can't lose touch at this stage, but you're probably not going to want to break away, and you're going to need to save your energy because you're close enough to that last climb.
Yeah, and I'm loving the idea. The small climb is the starter, the main climb, the main course. The descent this time round is the dessert. Let's not forget, the next time they go up this at the end of this race, there is no dessert, Matt. The finish line is at the very top.
It is indeed. So here we go, 24.5k now under the wheels of our leaders in Category 1 here on a Sunday Race Club on MyWhoosh. And at the moment, you can see that the dynamics are such that this is just moving about. Now, Michael Vink laid off a little bit here. For anybody else who'd say, oh, he's been dropped. No, this is Michael Vink. This is one of our big favourites here, because Michael Vink, remember, this is a rider who takes win after win after win. He had took 2 wins in our qualifiers. He's got a 2nd place. That's in October. He was the winner of our September final, a win in the qualifying in September as well. Wins back in July. He is a known winner, and he knows how to ride this platform. He knows when to push and when to sit in, and how to use that drafting to maximum effect. And that is really, really key. As I was saying earlier, I was actually jumping on and racing earlier on in the week. In fact, yesterday, and I wasn't using the draft as effectively as I might. And in fact, Emma had to stick her head around the door at the wrong moment in time and actually told me off doing a proper DS job. And I think that is key, isn't it? That's the role of DS is really needed, isn't it? Because you can push too hard too soon. You can think, oh, I've got to be there, and not use your energy carefully. And that's when your DS has got to rein you in a bit.
Yeah, the only time you need to be on the front of the group, Matt, is when you cross the finish line.
Oh, that sounds an awfully familiar line. I might have said that before in the past.
Unless, of course, there's a prime or a sprint. But, technically, the only time on a scratch race you want to be at the front is at the finish line. The best esport platform rider is not the one with the highest 20-minute power. It's not about how long and how hard you can go. Actually, often I would argue that it's the person with the lowest watts per kilo during the race who's crossed in the highest position that has done the best race.
Maybe it should be position divided by watts per kilo or something like that.
Oh, we can see some technical stuff going on in the background to try and work some things out.
Well, I know just a man to do it. Lucky enough to record the crosscast with Neil, who is my co-host on that, and he is an absolute data fiend. He would be the perfect person for doing an alternative version of results. You can download that if you want to catch up with myself on the crosscast. But don't forget, of course, we're here every Sunday on MyWhoosh, on the Sunday Race Club. Myself, Matt Payne, and Emma Martin here, bring you all of the action. We're in with our category 2 riders at the moment. It's our 2 leaders, Spratt and Maglio, who have put 16 seconds into Francis Il Pino. They've hitched a lift on the express train that is our category 1 riders here, and you can see that they are now using this group to their advantage to try and bring them further clear from Il Pino at the moment. Behind then it's Baltazar, Angarita, Caligula, Al-Ramethri, and we did say Hassan Al-Ramethri would steadily close down from the back of the group. He has done that, and he's now up with Angarita, with Moreno, with Baltazar, and continuing to push. But this is a big group. They will want that first prize because they are not all teammates of Roses in front. They're going to want to push on and try and close down on our 2 leaders, but it's a big gap. I make that gap something in the region of about 1 minute or so. It's going to be varying a little bit. We'll see how that transforms to the race finish a little bit later on. But we're back in with our race leaders now.
We are indeed, and we are back in watching Lionel Vujassin on the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club as this lead group hits the Category 4 climb on this course for the second time today. We go up this climb 3 times. In fact, the finish line is at the top of this climb on its 3rd ascent. So as the gradient hits 9%, this group of 13 Category 1 riders are still all together and working really strongly.
And as we go up this climb, we're about to crest the top of the first part of this ascent. We're then going to go very quickly into an incredibly quick downhill where you want to carry as much pace in and through the transition point at the bottom, and we can just see this gap very interestingly just starting to open. Vink is at the back of this group here. Is he waiting to take a run through the draft as they hit the bottom to try and get his timing right? Zanaska and Bart van den Eekhout are on the front here with Noren as well, just coming up and through. But watch out for Vink. He was right at the back. Now I think he's just charging his way through using that draft, but it looks to me like Popovic and Osborne. Then now here comes Michael Vink. He came down that climb, that descent at 8 watts per kilo there. He's gone straight the way through at 7.5. He's used the momentum to carry himself onto the climb, but you can see how steep this is. It doesn't carry you very far.
No, and we talked about an average gradient of 4.5%, but this climb tops 15%, and as you can see it go up to 16, 16.8, 17. This is a killer gradient on this climb, and it is so deceptive on the course map. Knudsen is showing us how to put the power down and causing a small gap back to Osborne, Vink, Van den Eekhout, Vujassin, Popovic, Noren. These are class riders here on this climb, and the volume of class is just shown in the fact that there are still 13 riders in this lead group.
And our front 3 riders, Vink, Osborne and Knudsen, are all on that Danish Pavlova squad. This is a dangerous, dangerous moment in the race for all the other teams. Van Est has seen this. He responded. The Belgian Waffles rider has managed to push to get closer. Nasca of the Italian Gelato squad also pushing on. Pablo Popovic really is fighting to stay in this group. but you can see a little bit further back, those gaps are starting to open. And remember, when we get to the very top of this, it's a very quick descent and ascent, a tiny little kicker at the end. But we are seeing riders off the back. Remember, this was 13 riders. I think it's going to be down to about 11 riders in the mix as we go on to the final upper slopes. The gradient eases here and it kicks again. Vidal Mare, Mr. X100 are in trouble. They are off the back of the group here. So SS comes up over the top of Mr. X100 with Vidal Mare alongside SS, not wanting to be distanced. Martins has gone, Thiem has gone, Bushmore. All the rest of the riders are out of this. SS should make contact, but remember, we've got another steep little kick here until we reach the line. This is the next tough section. Watch that gradient increase up to 14.6, 15.5%. It goes over that now and into the top of the climb. This is the penultimate time up the climb here today, and this is where, if you are feeling the pace and the pressure, you are going to be in trouble, because the riders will try and push now. They know that they've broken a couple of riders off the back of that group, and they are key riders in this race, particularly in the team competition that really has got some big prizes at stake this time around. So over the top we go, and you can just see SS Zanaska, Knudsen, Osborne. It is going to be Vujasin in here. Noren Van Elster just about in touch, but the gaps have opened behind them, and they really have split this group. It is a really tough climb, that. And as they roll into this downhill, the speed's going to pick up. Remember, we've seen speeds of up to 75, 80 kilometers an hour. That is 45 to 50 miles an hour on this descent.
So that top of that climb, Matt, is going to be our finish line the next time the riders go up there. And that was absolutely amazing, because I think on my count, we are now down to 9 riders in this lead group. So we went into the bottom of that climb with 13 riders in this lead group. We come down the other side with a group of 9. They now have a 13.9 kilometer transition before they hit that climb again. And the finish line is at the top.
So the riders on that descent here, coming off the big climb, it's a long way down here, but it passes so quickly once the pressure goes on. And you can see that gradient is still holding at about 3% descent on this section. So even when you get to the bottom of the steep section, it still keeps on descending, and it's almost all downhill. There's one slight kicker until we get to the 32.7 marker, which is the end of the lap. But we're looking at the gap and the damage that was done. Vidal Mare and Mr. X100 on that climb lost touch. They lost a little bit of ground, and of course that has been really driven home. That wedge inserted and really knocked into place of forcing apart that gap, and that means now that the work has to be done by them. They've got to be very quick about this on this descent, but they are up against the bigger group in front, so they've got to really push on to get themselves back in touch with the group. We're just riding in with Pablo Popovic, Michael Vink, Jason Osborne, Stefan Van Elst. SS is in to the group, I think, here as well. But Van den Eekhout riding strongly as well, but a really strong group of riders. They've got 13 now, nearly 14 seconds on Mr. X100 and Vidal Mare. So at the moment, our riders in the lead group coming around towards the end of lap number 2. Remember, we only have half a lap left. That's essentially fractionally more than that. It basically takes us up onto the top of that climb for the final run through. Mr. X100 working hard here, but I think he's going to know that he's not going to pull back the riders in front, but he will want to minimize that time, because he, I think, is going to be our third counter for the UAE clan team, who are going to want to score points there.
Yeah, so Matt, 10 riders in this lead group now. We have Vujasin, Van den Eekhout and Van Elst, all from the Belgian Waffles team. We have Knudsen, Vink and Osborne, Danish Pavlovas, Zanaska and Noren from the Italian Gelato, and Popovic and SS from the UAE clan team. So 1, 2, 3, 4 teams still in this lead group.
And how many of those teams have all 3 counting riders in the leading group?
2. So Belgian Waffles have got 3 riders. Danish Pavlovas still have 3 riders.
And that is going to be key because remember, of course, prizes may go down to 5th, but of course they are graduated down with the biggest prize for 1st place, which everybody's going to want. But the gap still holding at 13 seconds means that Mr. X100 is not giving up on this. And we've seen big final climbs, big ascents at the end can produce huge gaps in a very short space of time. We saw that when we went to the amazing Colombian World. We went on the climb. It was essentially big climb, level section, massive climb at the end, and that really did produce. I mean, we could have used a calendar to put the gaps in between some of our riders. It was huge, not surprisingly.
Oh, it put minutes. The last 3 kilometres put minutes into the gaps with the race. Because let's be honest, Matt, when you blow, sometimes you really blow. We saw that the other week in the women's race. Rebecca Gilson's heart rate went to 207 beats per minute, and all of a sudden she came to a standstill. And that's what can happen. So we still have a group of 10 very strong riders at the moment. Knudsen, Osborne, Vanden Eckhout, Van Elst, SS, Pablo Popovic. These are really strong riders. 10 riders in this lead group, 2 chase riders, 14 seconds back. But I can't see, I'm going to put it out there, I cannot see them catching. Not unless something dramatic happens.
Dramatic. I think the front group would need to be abducted by aliens and drop back in behind them at this rate.
That would be dramatic.
It would indeed, because that's the sort of distance we're talking. It's the length of this finishing straight. It doesn't look much. They can see the riders in front. They are closing down a little, but the problem comes, they were dropped on a climb. That shows that they didn't have the power and the pace to stay with the leading group as they came over the top. I can't imagine somebody as experienced as Mr. X100 or Vidal Mer would be in a position where they lost concentration for that fraction of a second it takes. It's not likely to happen, but this is some comeback at the moment. They're down to 9 seconds. You can see the group in front coming, and Mr. X100 is doing the work. He wants to be there for his team. He wants to get up there. He's the road captain for a reason. He's absolutely flying here. They've got it down to 8 seconds at the moment. Well, it might not need an alien abduction after all, the way they're going at the moment. They are starting to close, and surely the group in front are going to respond to this. It's down to 6 seconds now.
They are going. In fact, they can see them on the road ahead of them. And you know what, Matt? This is class riding by Mr. X100. He's thought about the terrain. He's thought about what the group in front are going to be doing, and he's riding appropriately to make the catch. He knew they were going to sit up. He knew they were going to take a rest, and that's what he's banked on. And he's time trialing over to them.
He is now. He's going to need some assistance, I think, from Vidal Mer for that last part, because that's the point at which the riders, if they've not been attentive, will be aware that he's coming. He also will want to get back on and at least take a breath before they hit the next climb up. This takes us up onto the plateau, and it's a real nasty little kicker that brings you up. The rider's going to see it as they go over the water, but look at the gap coming down here. We don't need a clock. You can see it on your screens. The leading group of riders, of 10 riders, are about to become 12 as Mr. X100 toes across Vidal Mer, and now they're going to have to get into this group. They've got to do some very quick recovery. No jumping on the front doing any work. They need to get that lactic acid out of their legs. They need to recover and be ready for the next kicker. We take a left turn, a sharper right-hand turn, which lines us up for that climb. And that is when the pace will go up, because when people can see the attack point, that's when they start to put the pressure on.
They do indeed. So this front group now was 10. It is now 12. Those 2 riders made that catch. And as they take this right-hand bend across this bridge, we have a lead group in the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club October final of 12 riders.
We have, and we're now on to the next climb again. Really starting to push as they come up on to the climb. The power has gone up again, and this is where Mr. X100 and Vidal Mer have to do some recovery. They can't afford to be aggressive at this point, because they will be absolutely on fire. The legs will be burning, the lungs will be aching after that massive effort to get back across. They need to do that recovery, and we're starting to see riders yo-yoing in and out of this group now. This is where the UAE clan team needed to go a little quiet and for there to be a little bit of a truce until the final climb. This is where all the other teams want to be pushing on and breaking up the race and making the riders who just chased hard to get back onto the group pay the price for that. But Vidal Mayer up into second wheel. I think he's going to roll into the front here. He's got Knudsen with him, but they are all in touch here at the moment. And what they can't afford to do is let the gap go now as we go over the top. Everybody pretty much back together again. I think it was Mr. X100 just being distanced a little bit as they came over the very top there, but he's rolled back in. So this group is all back together again.
Yeah, those teammates need to look after him for a little bit. He is that third counter for the UAE clan team. He's worked hard to close that gap, but he needs looking after and a bit of recovery now so that he is of benefit to that team on these final climbs. We have 3 riders from the Belgian Waffles, 3 riders from the Danish Pavlovas, and 3 riders currently from the UAE clan team in this final group. This team competition is wide open as well as the individual.
Well, I think Mr. X100 just yo-yoing at the back here, an indication he has gone right into his limit and started to come out the other side there on the right-hand side of the screen, just coming on to the main screen here. Christoph, a theme. This is the group behind us. So this is Ferry, Martins and Theme. They are currently 2 minutes down on our race leader, so they're not going to get back to them, and they're trying to keep clear of Olivier Simmons, and Wilhelm Bush-Muller behind. Then it's Graves and Cutler and co. But there's about 15 seconds between our group of Theme, Martins and Ferry and the riders behind. Remember, there are prizes individually for the top 5. There are prizes for the top 5 teams. And it could well be that the positions of these riders are critical for gaining prizes in that team prize, even if they're not in the top 5 riders as an individual.
Yeah, the prize fund today, Matt, on the October final is huge. Equivalent of $13,000 for the first team in Category 1. Equivalent to $2,700 for the first rider over the line in Category 1. Both individual and team prizes. The finals are fantastic and there is everything to play for.
Yep, and those are US dollars, thing that Emma was talking about there. So don't forget, of course, if you're in AEDs, I think the team price is 50,000 AED. In US dollars, it is again
$13,000.
Oh, that would do nicely, wouldn't it? That was a nice payday for the team. And then all you got to do is work out who you share it in amongst. Is it everybody who's in there? Is it everybody who counted? It'd be interesting to see how that team dynamic works. I think it's the old thing, having that team, having a strong team, looking after your team riders. It is so critical, particularly when you need all 3 riders because of the level of competition to finish in that leading group. Because it does mean that if, for example, Pablo Popovic wanted to attack and he's lost Mr. X100 who's off the back of the group, he couldn't really go on the attack there because that wouldn't have helped Mr. X100 get back on to the back of the group. But the riders at the moment riding strongly. We have less than 8 kilometers to go. And what an 8 kilometers we've got. We've got a bumpy in run into the final climb. The final climb, a 2-stage climb, and that kicks off at just over 42.5K into the race.
Yeah, so we are awaiting the final climb on this course today that comes at 42.6 kilometres. It is the third of 3 Category 4 climbs, 2.4 kilometres in length, 4.5% average gradient. But don't be deceived. That kicks to 13, 14, 15%. It really just is a climb that keeps on giving. You can see that flag at the top, but there is a kicker before. That first climb goes up, it comes down, and then the course goes again. And the last 300 meters of that climb are steep. The riders will see that finish line, but they will still have a real kick to ride.
Well, that final section will be critical, but I am thinking we're going to see at least one attack on the little pre-climb that goes at 42.6 before the main section of the climb. I think I'll be wanting to shed a few riders. Now, the riders who have been quiet, this is where we look at who hasn't been on the front, who hasn't been doing too much work, who's been relatively quiet. Well, I think you could count pretty much everyone in that group has not been very active in the front. Even Michael Vink has not been really aggressive. He's allowed the terrain to do the talking for him. So they've kept the pressure on. They've maybe put in a dig. We've seen Vajasin pushing. We've seen the squad of Nuts and Vink and Osborne pushing on the climbs, but they've not put in crazy numbers. We're not seeing 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 watts per kilo. We have been seeing a push, but not really an attack. And then the terrain has dealt the blows to the rider behind, and it's distance riders. That's why we are down to such a small group of riders now, because this is an unrelenting course. There's hardly any flat of any description on here. In fact, the best point of rest actually is to run into that climb. Our riders at the moment at a 0.2%, so just rolling around on the flat, but they are not having it easy. It's constantly changing, and that means that they are constantly having to change the pace.
Yeah, so these 12 riders here in this front group, I think, are taking a little bit of a rest here. I'm watching heart rates come down and riders being smart about what they're doing. They are going to be taking 12 riders into the last 5K of this race, Matt. That is a lot of riders for the top 5 positions, but also for the top teams. We are taking 3 full squads into that final 5K.
Well, that is in our category 1. We just dropped into category 3 here, and it looks like it is going to be Renata Santorio Ramos, who is leading this race out for the global team. His teammates Dadson, Gill, and Kause, the riders who are behind. Dadson in the group immediately behind him, so it's looking good at the moment for the global team. The team competition in Category 3, no less competitive, no less fiercely fought as Category 2 or Category 1, a real battle, and it's great to see our teams really stepping up to the mark in our finals week, particularly in Category 3. I mean, only one rider not part of a team in Category 3. That's got to be a record.
I know, Matt. And actually, one of the things to say, whether our riders are in Category 1, Category 2, or Category 3, the competition is fierce. The way the categories work, you are in with riders who are of your like ability. So the racing is strong regardless of category. And Dadson, we know, and Ramos, Dadson has won a couple before. Ramos is strong. The teams are strong. And it's always a good race regardless of category.
It is indeed, and certainly it looks like that has continued onwards all the way through the racing so far into the finish in all of our categories. Just taking a look at category 2 on the right hand side of your screen, just coming up on the main screen here with Hassan Al Remethri. He's in pursuit of Maglio, Spratt, and Pino. Pino, the rider immediately in front of him, but Spratt and Maglio now 2 minutes in front. They must have the category 2 first and second places pretty much sewn up. I know our Hassan Al Remethri puts in a big dig and gets quicker as the race goes on, but there's only so much you can do, and at this stage I think 2 minutes too much to make up.
Yeah, well, Spratt and Maglio both finished in the top 5 last time the men were on this course. They know this course well, and they know how to ride it for their strengths.
So back in with the race leaders in Category 1 after we've just looked at Spratt and Maglio in Category 2 when Mr. X100 just sitting at the back of this group. He knows that it's all going to come down to the last 2.5 kilometers potentially. At the moment, it is rolling terrain, and you can see we are at 41 kilometers nearly as they make their way in on to this next little rise. We do have a little bit of a kicker coming in before we go on to the climb of 42.6, but nothing that should test these riders. I don't think anybody's going to get fractured off the back until we go on to that final climb. But at the moment, our leaders all together.
Yeah, in fact, pretty much they've now got a gentle descent till they get to the bottom of that climb, Matt. So final opportunity for a bit of a micro rest and bringing that heart rate down before a really big kick. And you can see some of the watts per kilo reflecting that as riders drop to around 2 watts per kilo before this little kick. They'll go over the top of the little kick and then they'll run down for around 1K before that final climb comes.
So Bart Van den Eyck out to Jason Osborne, Vidal Mayer, SS, Pablo Popovich, Mr. X100, Lionel Vujassin, Jason Osborne. It really is a who's who of who's been at the front of the men's racing so far. And at the moment, our leading riders just now starting to lap riders in the race field, which always makes life interesting when we've got multiple laps. Our riders in the categories who are about to be overtaken get a grandstand view of the leaders just coming up and past them. As you can see, that bunch on the way past, always worth a little bit of a kick to try and jump in, but you're not going to stay in there for long.
Oh, no way, not the way these riders are travelling at the moment. We've got 3 kilometres left of this race, near enough all uphill. We've got 12 riders left in this front group with 4 teams represented, 3 of which who have got a full complement of riders.
And the leading group being chased by Mitch Ferry, Martin Martins, Christoph Thiem. They are currently a minute down on the leading group. 30 seconds behind, it's Bush, Muller and Simmons. And then another further minute and a half, nearly 2 minutes. It's the Phil Graves, Jonas Bjarhead group behind. So the groups are fractured all over the road. The top 10 should come from our leading riders who are about to make their way up on to the main climb. This chasing group working well, but here we go. We're in with the leaders. We're at 42.6. Remember, this climb starts with a slight rise. You can see we're at 0.9% now. We're at 1.2, 1.3, and it's just up from here. This first kicker is steep. We then have that second long main part of the climb, which is steeper still.
It is, as Mr. X100 just has to put in a little bit more power on those pedals to close that gap, as he's just hanging off the back of that group at the moment. A little bit of power pushed on in, nicely done.
And this is all about now making sure you don't lose contact. Don't go into the red zone too early. You've got to save that kick for the top. If you go in red zone now, you are in major trouble. And I think Mr. X100 is going to be in trouble when they hit that climb. We're just all looking across at Phil Graves, actually, who's having to work to stay with Bjarhead and Cutler in that group, chasing in towards the line here. But our race leaders at the moment clear on the front. They are absolutely motoring. Graves is not going to get back in touch, not with over a minute a gap. 40 seconds to the group in front as the leaders are on to the climb. We're riding in with Mr. X100, who's on the back of the group here, and I'm not sure he's going to have the power to go clear, but he's just about holding them. He needs to stay on this climb. Remember, there are team prizes at stake. This is the kicker, the first kicker of 2 main parts of this climb. There's the steep descent in between, and at the moment, I think we are just seeing the pressure being wound up. No massive attacks. We're not seeing 10 watts per kilo off people, but they are really working hard. It's Lucas Zanaska and Jason Osborne on the front, but we're seeing 8 watts per kilo as a max at the moment. We're not seeing a massive race-winning attack.
No one has put in a big dig at the moment. Everybody can cope with this pace, and we have got 12 of the strongest riders on the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club October final on this final climb. They have got less than 1.5 kilometres of climbing left to go before the finish line comes. Zanaska, X100, SS, Osborne, Popovich, Knudsen. These riders are now on the descent between these 2 climbs.
And one of the things you're noticing is I think you're seeing a few people using this downhill. They're just winding it up. Look at the bodies coming rocketing through. This is where we expect to see those favourites moving up to the front. They know that they need to hit this climb and hit it hard. Here we go. You can see the road rising, and this is where the cream should come to the top, because Knudsen has now started to push up to 9 or 10 watts per kilo there. Big kick from Michael Knudsen. Osborne in second place, his teammate there. But Norrin is holding them at 8.6 watts per kilo. Norrin with that red hair and beard at the moment. In third place, Stefan van Elst is right in the mix here from the Belgian Waffle squad. But it's Knudsen who is making the running at the moment.
Yeah, and we have seen Knudsen before. He is a consummate climber, virtual Everesting champion. He knows how to climb, and he knows how to climb within his limits as well. And his limits are often higher than everybody else's.
Well, bigger surprise is Mr. X100 being distanced. Not that he's being distanced because he was struggling on his climb last time, but he's been distanced with Michael Vink at the moment. Vink has gone off the back of this group. Previous winner, a guy who can climb this climb very comfortably, struggling here today, and that has big implications for that team prize as well, because Knudsen has gone clear on the front, and he is going to need to put a gap in here. The time is running out, and we are on 500 meters to go. At the moment, nobody has a substantial gap. This group is still relatively together. There are not massive gaps opened up between them. Osborne, Popovic, and Van Elst are right on the heels here of Michael Knudsen. There's nothing to choose between them, and we are just seeing Popovic now go. Popovic at 13 watts per kilo. Has he got his timing right? He was so powerful last time out. He was on form in our last qualifier. Is he going to make it to the finish? Here he goes. Now the chase is on. Osborne on his way up this climb. He's chasing hard here. Popovic has got 12.5 watts per kilo. Can Osborne answer the Alpecin Koenig rider? Can he match Pablo Popovic? He's not going to get him. Pablo Popovic of the UAE clan team comes through. He takes victory. It's going to be second place for Jason Osborne as he comes through the line. Van Elst and Knudsen working hard to come through immediately behind him here. And you can just see it's Popovic from Osborne, from Knudsen. Then it's Van Elst, Naska, and Vujasin. So 2 from Pavlova, 2 from the Waffles, 2 from the UAE clan team in through the finish. This is going to be so tight on that team race.
It is indeed. The team race is tight, but Vink is in. Oh my goodness, it is so tight between Italian Gelato and Danish Pavlovas, but the Pavlovas at the moment unofficially have the team win with Jason Osborne, Michael Knudsen and Michael Vink.
Wow, that was so close between those riders. You can see that we have our leaders board up on the screen. A winning at 1 hour, 8 minutes, 48 seconds for Pablo Popovic of the UAE clan team with the Danish Pavlova riders Osborne and Knudsen in second and third place respectively. Stefan van Elst of Belgian Waffles in fourth. Top 5 for the Italian Gelato rider Lucas Nesca with Lionel Vujasin immediately behind him. Now SS is on his way in towards the line. This is going to get really interesting in those positions behind the race leaders. Remember all of the results on MyWhoosh.com. Results on there.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pull out, Matt, Mr. X100 finishing 7th there, 19 seconds down on the winner. He worked so hard in that last lap to pull back, and rewarded by that 7th place.
Indeed, and you look at that, he came in ahead of Johan Norrin, amazing rider Norrin, and Vink and Van den Eekhout, and Met and Mr. X100 both chased back on there. Brilliant to see. Great racing here in the finals once again. Don't forget all of the results are on the MyWhoosh.com website. Make sure that you click subscribe on that YouTube channel for every time we go live with the Sunday Race Club, as well as getting, of course, all of those videos from Jeff and the team at MyWhoosh. All of our riders doing an amazing job today. That battle continues in the second and third categories. Don't forget, of course, they too will be up on those results, and those results unofficial until finally verified. The verification process on MyWhoosh are quite extensive, and we're going to look forward to seeing who's taking that. Don't forget, of course, we will be back for the next qualifier. We roll straight into that. That's next week, qualifier number 1. Between now and then, we have the finals of the October Women's race on Sunday Race Club. Emma, you've got to be looking forward to that.
I am indeed looking forward to the women's final. But as Matt says, November starts afresh. Join us for the November round. The individual qualifying races start. Get on that start line. Head over to the MyWhoosh website, download the app, get on your bike and join us.
Well, from me, Matt Payne, from Emma, it's been an absolute pleasure putting words to the action. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.